That's what's coming. That's what Holger's had to deal with in Germany. Not that specific example, but that type of legal persecution. And so with that, I'm going to turn the floor over to my good friend Holger Thuss, fantastic organization, European Institute for Climate and Energy. Holger.
Thank you. Thank you for this wonderful introduction. I'm not used to such introductions, really. Thank you, really. I enjoyed it a lot. And also thank you one more time for the invitation to this conference. I really enjoy to be here. And it's been also a few years that I'm speaking at one of your conferences. It's really big fun. Thank you. And I also believe in conferences because where can you meet so many wonderful, interesting people and find new books? And yeah, I enjoy it a lot. Now I try to unlock my telephone because my presentation is on my phone and it's switching itself off all the time. So that's going to be fun. Yeah, so maybe you go to the next slide. Like, yeah, exactly. Because I wanted to use the opportunity also like to explain the situation a little bit. What's going on? Here's the thing. Okay, nobody told me. I wanted to explain the situation a little bit on our own example because this makes a little bit more sense. So what you see here is this article where, I mean, you might wonder what IBAN does or doesn't do or what it is or how the situation is. And it's always this abstract debate about freedom and freedom of speech and all these things. Here you have and I'm talking now a little bit about EIKE, just that you have an example what's going on in Europe. And I think we're a good example for what James described a moment ago. So what you see here is a cutout of a so-called scientific study on climate deniers. Because it's now a science in itself, there was a decision inside the European Union a couple of years ago to fight climate denialism by going into these groups and to do kind of to do papers and conferences on deniers and and the people invited were sociologists but also psychologists. They wanted to, of course, present us as like crazy people. And one of the results is this thing. And just to describe the methodology, because I've been asked, how do they fight you and how do you defend yourself? Okay. Now somebody even calls me. It's also interesting. One more thing, like here on top, you see this logo. Maybe I go to the next slide because I was a little bit enlarging it also. So how does this work? I press the button. Yeah, okay. Yeah. So you see on top, Climate Social Science Network. So what they do, there's such a network. It looks funny, looks progressive, colorful, diverse. It's not as funny as it seems because there you see the logo, this on the bottom is Brown University. So first lesson learned for today, international cooperation, Heartland EIKE is important because there are people in the EU, they're under investigation by so-called science organizations, and behind it is American Brown University. Yeah. I don't know, it feels funny. If you dive even deeper and you go through all these menu points here, you find that such reports are financed by you, the taxpayer, because there are now budget lines. I don't know if our friend Lee Selden was cutting these budget lines. I think he talked about it in the morning, but in the EU, these budget lines are definitely there. And in the neighborhood of these budget lines, of course, you also find budget lines for financing the media. We used to have these two ladies coming to these conferences, writing long articles about how bizarre all this is from their viewpoint, and they're all financed by the taxpayer, by the European Union. It's a lot of money, maybe not for them, but for a small NGO like ours, this would be a lot of money, I can tell you that. But what makes me happy, on the other hand, is when they then come to the conclusion that we are, if you can, I think in the back you cannot even read this, it says here, a stronghold of climate change denialism in Germany, case study of the output and press representation of the think tank EIKE. So I totally love this stronghold of climate change denialism. It's from 2022, and they say, they also, and this is, you can generalize this, climate change denialist think tanks have played a major role in climate obstructionism in the United States, and no, I cannot even read it myself. And then it says also that they work with their US counterparts. And again, you can see, like that's the major conclusion is, yes, their work, EIKE's work, makes sense. The second conclusion in the summary is, and this international cooperation is playing a part. And the third conclusion, it's implicated, it's not really written here, is of course, and for that we have to fight them because this is so dangerous for our agenda. And I think everybody should know that, who's asking himself, why do we have these think tanks in Europe or in America? What are these people doing in Washington? The other thing, because there is a clock running, I have to go through these things a little bit with a, I mean, I could speak for hours about all these things that are playing a certain role if you do the job we do. Something totally else, legal framework. I understand this is here also kind of a lawyer's workshop, kind of. They also, step by step, changed the German constitution. And that's maybe, God forbid, but maybe you also get a democratic administration in a couple of years. And just to have, maybe it's interesting to see how they did it in Germany, because the constitutions are a bit similar with the federalism and all this. It started, I mean, the most important is that, like, really the thing that really changed everything was a new paragraph. It's 143H in our constitution. Like, our constitution has, I think, 145 paragraphs, and they introduced this. And they were defining as an official objective of the German constitution climate neutrality by 2045. And of course, climate neutrality is a weasel word based on fake science and hoaxes, but of course they take it that seriously. And this has two nice consequences. Number one is, and that's also the official explanation, they can now create as much fiat money. We are no longer speaking about budget lines or budgets, speaking about the creation of new fiat money for the saving our planet, basically. This is what it says. And what they are talking about is up to 500 billion euros annually, or even more if the gravity of the situation demands it. This is what they are saying to their own constitutional amendment. And they call this, on top of the insanity, they call this investments. You know, this is similar to the stuff that Lee Selden was talking about in the morning. Before that, there was a Supreme Court decision, and you know, you have a Supreme Court as well. Like, these court decisions, they take usually a long time. And in this case, it was like the court decision was on Monday, and the new law was in place on Friday, or something like this. I made this now up. Maybe it was 2 weeks, but not longer. So what you can see is it was a stunt. It was not really somebody with a problem going to the court. It was all very well prepared by certain interest groups. And you can also prove this. We don't have the time for this. What I also wanted to say with this constitutional, I forgot this with this constitutional amendment, the election of the new parliament was in February. The old parliament, to amend the constitution and to implement such a paragraph, was meeting one more time in March 18 last year. And the new parliament started to work March 25. So even this, most of the people that studied law in Germany and know the constitution from there, they all agree that this was entirely unconstitutional. However, nobody cares. All the people, all the parties in our parliament, from the Greens to the Christian Democrats, except the conservative AfD party, agreed on the procedure, and the constitution has been amended that way. I mean, they do not even follow procedures that are like 70, 80 years old. And so even this does not matter anymore when it's about saving the planet. The other point, I think people talked about this, scientific dissent leads to immediate job loss. I don't think I have to explain this. This is like the reason that people like me are talking about climate science and not real climate scientists. Yeah? I'm not a climate scientist. I also want to say this. I'm just a critique of climate science and climate scientists. So I think it's easy to understand. The media doesn't want to understand this, by the way, but I think you don't need to be a chef to understand that the soup is not very delicious. Yeah? That's like the thing, Anyways, then I also would like to mention at least all these institutes. I don't know if you ever heard of the IIASA. This is an international institute based in Jena that was created under the infamous, I think, Johnson administration. Disarmament and all this, they're still there. And the president is this infamous Schellenhuber from Germany. It's a little bit like playing pool, there are a lot of balls rolling around, they're all somehow connected, you don't know which one is falling into which hole and what is popping up and what is next. And these people are, you just go to their website, and the first headline that you find is, I just picked this up, centuries of net negative emissions required to secure a safe climate future. And they are supposed to do entirely different stuff, but they've been hijacked and they are more or less shaping the agenda all over Europe. And democratic institutions have to come second, and I'm almost sure that such groups they have no legitimacy, but of course they were behind all these constitutional and other amendments. And their agenda is purely socialist. I must know it, I grew up in socialism. Net zero is an official target, yeah, that's like obvious. And what we see now in Germany is that the insolvencies of companies are at an all-time high. You as Americans should be happy about this. I was just reading, like, our biggest company, Siemens, is now investing $250 million in Lexington, North Carolina. Just imagine this. I've been in North Carolina. I mean, this is not really the most central place of the world,
That's West Virginia.
That's West Virginia. Yeah, we learned this today. West Virginia is the center of the world. Anyways, more trees. Yeah. And the other thing is mass migration out of Germany. Like, it's a little bit like the Arabs are coming in, the Germans are moving out. Yeah? I hope the president here understands that there should be a big door. Maybe that's like should be closed or more closed, but there should be a little door on the side, and you should let all these German doctors and engineers in. I think you need them. But seriously, of Generation C, 4 out of 5 of these young people are thinking about leaving Germany, and 1 out of 5 is already like, they are 20, 25, they're already planning their emigration. They don't see a future for themselves in Germany anymore because of the overall situation. Then, of course, the last point is these little discriminations that are piling up against organizations like ours. EU regulations concerning censorship. I could talk for hours, but as I said, we have this watch here. And maybe if you have questions, I could answer this. The good news is that climate skepticism in Germany is on the rise. This was always a thing I did not understand. I'm also doing this for 20 years, and the Germans, they wanted to protect the climate like crazy, and the numbers are still very high, but they're now definitely going down. And of course, when something is developing in a direction the government doesn't want to see, then of course you have to a little bit think around the corner, because all these different polls I was quoting, they have not much to do with each other. You have to a little bit think for yourself. Well, it shouldn't be a problem since you're climate skeptics. So I don't know if you can read this. I can read it out for you. So there's data from 2009 saying 55% of the Germans ranked climate change as one of four most serious problems. That was higher than EU average. 2026, 15 years later, 17 years later, it's a little bit less. 53% of the Germans feel personally responsible for fighting climate change. And that's a drop from 69. And then climate updates, the other part, 72% say climate change is man-made and real, but 65%, and only 65% are worried or very worried. But this is a drop in support also of 15% since 2021. So also the speed of decreasing numbers is accelerating. And then last number, AfD, this party is very conservative. They went up from, and they are climate skeptics. And the reason that they're climate skeptics is that we wrote it, or we helped them writing it in their manifesto, yeah? which was also not easy. I have to say this, like when they started this new party, the wind power lobby and other green lobby groups joined them and came there very well prepared, trying to somehow shape an alarmist right-wing party. I don't know if this works, but they at least tried very hard, and they were also very well financed. But the numbers of this party are like 2020, only 6 years ago, they were on 11% on the federal level, and now it's 25%. And you can see how this party has many problems. I'm not a member of this party, and I'm also not promoting any party politics, to be clear. But of course, you have to imagine how dire the situation is if the people support this party anyway, because you can also lose your job if you're active in this party. Not as a voter, but if you're a very prominent member, then it could lead to personal consequences, serious ones. So that I'm already at the end of my presentation, but I wanted to say one thing, and also particularly because my friend Craig Wrightstone is interested in this. This is a mofetta. I don't know if you know what a mofetta is. I like to talk about mofettas because they are natural sources of carbon dioxide, and they're everywhere. And it has to become a passion of mine to look for these things, and because I really wonder, honestly, why we talk so much about carbon dioxide, but not so much about natural carbon dioxide sources. And so people tell me sometimes that's always the same amount of carbon dioxide emissions coming out of the ground. I don't really believe it, but I wanted to at least that you, because I do this all the time, I know that most people have never even heard the word mofetta, yeah? So I wanted to, please forgive me for this little joke at the end of my presentation. So next time you invite me, I give you a nice presentation about mofettas if you want. And I also wanted to make sure that I'm really also a little bit at least interested in the science of climate change, not only, arguing with government officials and criticizing them and all this political stuff. And yeah, that's already it. Thank you very much for your attention, and yeah.